Great. So we'll just let people keep coming in and we'll start with intros and get right into it, because to be honest with you, I've demoed this a few times myself without an audience, and it's a little long. So I'm going to try and go slowly, but still keep it brief so that we don't go over our time and have time for questions at the end. And Laura will just continue to let folks in. And I'm seeing people in the chat are already introducing themselves and saying hi. I see a question already about a video recording. Yes, and I'll mention that during the presentation as well, that everything I'm going to share today, the handouts, the slide deck itself, the links I'm going to say today, everything is going to be on the league's website, which is nyredistricting.org. Very nice and simple to remember. So as you're coming in, just make sure that you're on mute, and then we're just going to hop right into this basically. So I am going to share my screen, and then I'm going to introduce myself to anyone who doesn't know me. My name is Jennifer Wilson, and I'm the Deputy Director for the New York State League of Women Voters. And this is our first time doing this presentation. So I'm hoping it's going to go well. I just want to make sure that we are recording. Yes, okay, sorry. Just wanted to be sure because we have been getting a lot of requests for the recording of this. Okay, back to it. So this is a presentation that's super loosely adapted from a League of Women Voters of Washington presentation. And when I say super loosely, I think in total I kept 5 of their slides. So it is very New York State centric. And as I said, it is kind of a long presentation, but we are really going to dig in deep here. We're going to start super million-foot view. We're going to talk about the process. What is redistricting? Why does it matter? Why do we care? What is a testimony? How do we do a testimony? How do I testify specifically about redistricting? And how do I make my redistricting testimony really effective? And then we're going to go back to basics again. How do I even get started? And then offer some pro tips. So starting off, million-foot view, what is redistricting? Redistricting is the process that takes place every 10 years according to federal law that basically allows Congress and the state legislature to be redistricted to represent the populations of people moving in and out of districts according to the census. So basically, if you're moving to another place within 10 years, which statistically most people move around every 10 years, we want to make sure that the people living within the districts are being properly represented by a legislator. We want to make sure that every single person within the state has an equal voice and representative in government. So we don't want to have one district that only has 10 people in it and another with 20 people in it. But when their legislators both go to Congress or the Assembly or the state Senate to cast their vote, the district with 20 people and the district with 10 people have the same representation, even though one district has a lot more people. So in this presentation, we are talking specifically state Senate, state Assembly, and Congress, because that is what's on the table right now in New York State. The local districts, in some cases, I've learned not every municipality does redistricting. In some municipalities, it's at-large seats. But if your city, your village, your town does do redistricting, it's going to happen next year. So right now we're talking state Senate, state Assembly, and Congress. So how does redistricting work in New York State? In New York State, we've got some rules. We've got some rules and regulations. So these are the sort of simple rules: compact, contiguous, preserve political subdivisions, preserve communities of interest, preserve the cores of prior districts, be competitive, and not intentionally favor or disfavor an incumbent candidate or party. So what the heck do any of these words mean? Here's my little definitions for each of them. Compact. We want our districts to not be super, super large with people super spread apart. We want people to live close to each other. We want them to be neighbors, essentially. Contiguous. Your district should be one component. You should never lift your pen up from the paper when you're drawing your district. We don't want to have a little spot here and a spot here. That's not a contiguous district. preserving political subdivisions. We don't want to cross counties in half. We don't want to cross cities in half. We don't want to cross towns in half whenever possible. Certainly in some cases, you do have to split counties, you do have to split cities, but for the most part, we want to keep people intact. And preserving communities of interest, which is what we're really going to dig into here with the first part of the presentation. A community of interest is essentially a group, a community that has shared interests and values. That means we want to keep them together because chances are they have the same opinions on things, and their elected representative that's going to go to Congress, the Assembly, or Senate and represent them, we want them to represent those core values and beliefs. So who's even doing the redistricting? What's happening? How is this working? We have a 10-member commission for the first time ever. Previously, our legislative lines were drawn by the legislature themselves. The seated Assembly and Senate would draw the lines for Assembly, Senate, and Congress. Although usually they wouldn't do Congress, they would hand it off to the court and the court would draw our congressional lines. But now we have a commission. This commission is appointed by the legislature. It is bipartisan, plus 2 members that are not affiliated with either of the major parties. And the way that this process works is we have the commission gets formed, the commission holds hearings, the commission introduces draft maps. They have more hearings where the people can come and testify about those maps. And then the commission will edit those maps based on what they hear from the hearings. The commission then sends those maps to the state legislature, and the legislature can approve or reject the maps. And if they reject the maps, the commission gets a second bite at the apple and they get to submit a second round of draft maps. And if those get rejected, then the legislature gets to step in, take what the commission has done and draw their own maps. So it's not a perfect process, but it's better than what we had before. So here is a calendar of events that I made. And the yellow highlight, that's where we are. We're at the yellow. We're in July and August. So we did all this stuff before that. We had the census, we got the population counts, we got some of the apportionment data. So we know that we're losing a congressional seat. We don't have the final population count yet. That is going to come in the middle of August. But right now we are having hearings that are all being held virtually, but they are being grouped together for certain regions of the state. So here, slides not working for a second. Here is all of the hearing dates in a nice, neat little slide. I'll leave this up for a second if anyone wants to take a quick screenshot of it. But we've already gotten started. As you can see, we had one today in Queens County that was held virtually. So I'm going to start with this point. I'm going to end with this point too, which is how to register for these hearings. So again, calendar on the screen right there. The Redistricting Commission's website is nyirc.org. When you go to that site, at the top of the screen is a control bar, and you can see meetings right there towards the right side. Click on meetings, and then on the right side of your screen again is submit testimony without attending a meeting or sign up to attend a meeting and testify. You do have to create an account. It's not really an account. It's basically, they want your email address so that way they know that they can email you. And then once you do that, you will receive an email from them when you are going to be testifying, if you're on the list, or if you submit testimony, you'll just get a thank you email. Now, that email will not come right away. You won't have the instant gratification of here's when you're going to be on the list to testify. It may come as soon as the day before the hearing, so just be aware of that. And you do have to sign up for these by 2 p.m. the day prior to the hearing that you would like to participate in. So again, I'm starting up front with this, and I'm going to say this slide again at the end. So we'll have it 2 times, so hopefully it'll commit it to memory. So now we've gotten all the nuts and bolts out of the way, we can start with the actual meat and potatoes of this. What is a testimony? A testimony is defined as a declaration or statement given in evidence, traditionally a written document, but also often verbally given at a hearing, and then also submitted in writing. So usually if you're gonna speak and testify at a hearing, you're usually expected to also submit that in writing. And I like to think of it as the sort of the 5 W's, the who are you, the what is your issue, the why do you have this issue, and when and how would you like this issue to be resolved? So kind of thinking as if like we're reporters. So how do why do we testify about redistricting specifically? Like what's our problem? What's the issue here? And this is where your community of interest comes in. What we talked about earlier, the rules around redistricting, preserving communities of interest. Your elected officials that's going to be represented by these lines, or how you'll be represented by these lines, they make like every single decision in your life. They make decisions about schools, roads, public transit, housing, garbage pickup, your parks, your water quality, your taxes, your green space. Are you going to get a new park? Your utilities, business regulations. Are we going to have this nice new business in our town? They make all the decisions. They call all the shots. And so it is so important that for the next 10 years, these district lines are drawn in a way that actually represents your community of interest. So I put together a list of what I perceive as some communities of interest in New York State to kind of flesh out this idea of communities of interest a little bit more. So a community of interest could be someone, or could be a group that all work for the same place. Maybe you all work at the hospital, or you're all working at the university. You guys all work at SUNY. Maybe you all work for a factory, you all work for GE, or maybe you're all farm or agriculture workers. Maybe you're all tourism workers. Maybe you all live in Lake Placid and you work at a hotel, or you have a restaurant there. Or maybe your community of interest has similar economic and environmental concerns. Hoosick Falls is a very sad example of this, but an example where they had a really horrible water crisis in Hoosick Falls that was a case of their district was split and they didn't have a good representative taking their issue to the state house. Or maybe you have really high property tax rates, Long Island, I'm looking at you. Or maybe you have really high rates of unemployment and poverty. I use Bronx as an example, but I know high unemployment and poverty is not just a city thing. It really impacts rural areas as well. Or maybe your community just has areas with similar values or beliefs. Maybe you have an Amish community, maybe you have Native American tribes, or maybe everyone in your community has the same religion, goes to the same churches, and has the same beliefs and values. What we're trying to do here is basically link all of these values, all of these sort of kind of not necessarily pie in the sky, these more of like, this is my everyday life, with how my elected representation at the state house and in Congress is impacted by those issues, and vice versa, how those issues impact that. So I made up an imaginary story, but this is I feel like this is a real story because since the hearings have started, I've heard people testify basically saying my fake story. So this is a story about a fake school and about a town that is split into 4 legislative districts. And here's my district map. So town 1, 2, 3, and 4, and each of the little white schoolhouses represents a school in this town. And as you can see on this map, there is a school dead set in the center of these 4 districts, split in between the 4 districts. So the children that attend this school, their parents, the voters, live in each of the 4 districts, but they only make up a teeny tiny portion of the voting block of each of those 4 districts. As a result, the town legislators who represent these parents don't really care about them. They have other schools in their district, and each year when the budget is decided, they don't really care to advocate for funding for this particular school. As a result, this school is the worst school in the town. It has the lowest graduation rates, the lowest test scores. It has no teachers. Their books are from the 90s. They don't even have enough chairs because their elected representatives don't really care about them. If we were going to redistrict this town in a way to fairly represent this community of interest, it might look, oh, I had an animation, school community district, thanks me. If we were to redistrict it in a way to fairly represent this school, it might look something like this. Now, this is just what I came up with. This isn't like the perfect redistricting map. And I think that's sort of one of the things to drive home with this is there really is no perfect answer for any of this, because splitting it this way, I might be cutting another community of interest. So we really have to think through what some of the other issues at hand are when we're redistricting. But this is just what I did for this particular community of interest. Now that school is wholly within District 1 and will have fair representation when it comes to advocating for that budget. So here are some other less pie in the sky things to think about when you're thinking about, is my legislator really representing me? Does your legislator care about your community's needs? Does your legislator's office, do they have an office near your neighborhood, or is it all the way in some other county or all the way on the other side of town? When there's an emergency in your district, does your legislator show up? Today, I was listening to the Queen's hearing, and someone told a very sad story about how there was a huge fire in their district, and their assembly member, he never even came. He never even came to the need of the people from the fire. Does your legislator visit your neighborhood? Do you ever see your legislator at all? Or do they like live somewhere crazy far themselves? And is your legislator unfamiliar with the people who live in your community? So this kind of goes back to the last one. Like, do they even know who lives there? These are much less pie in the sky, and these are all things that can be used in a testimony. But we need to back it up. We need to start at another point, because first we need to figure out who the heck even is our legislator, and what does my district even look like? So how do I analyze district lines? So there's a couple of different ways to do this. And like I said at the beginning, I will have links for all the things I'm going to mention at the end, and I'm going to give you options, because I know that testimony is not one size fits all, and technology is not one size fits all. So here's the first bare bones option. The New York State Legislative Task Force on Demographic Research and Reappropriament, also known as LAT4, lat4.state.ny.us/maps. If you just go to the LAT4 URL, you'll see the map link, but I gave you the whole thing. LAT4 used to be the agency, quote unquote, the legislative agency charged with drawing the maps. So they used to be the ones that drew the maps, that had the maps available. They used to be the ones who held the hearings. This is like an old website, and you can tell when you go on there because it feels like an old website. But here are the links to all of the maps. So as you can see, we go back three cycles of redistricting. So you could even look back further if you wanted, but 2012 is the most recent. And if I click any of those, Congress, state, Senate, or state assembly, I will get another option, which is to look even further down. So if you're in New York City, you can kind of blow up the map so you can see it bigger, so you're not like with a magnifying glass trying to look at the map. There's also some upstate cities and also downstate cities, or downstate from me, that are also same thing. You can blow it up bigger so you can see it a little bit closer so it doesn't look so crazy. So here's what, if I did statewide, here's what it looks like. And I showed you, like, literally this is what the screen looks like. It's a PDF, so you can download it and you can zoom in and out, but it really doesn't give you a lot. Like, you can see county boundaries, but like also not really, because the lines over the counties are, it just looks like a hodgepodge to me personally. I don't really love to use this when I'm looking at maps. I would much rather look at something that's overlaid on a Google map, because then I can see streets, I can see towns, I can see parks, I can see everything. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. So every single senator and assembly member on their website, on their like profile page on the Senate and Assembly site, has an Our District or Maps and Offices link where you can see what I just described. It's basically a Google map. It literally is a Google map with the district, the GIS file is what it's called, laid on top of it. So we can zoom in and out, we can see our parks, we can see our schools, we can see where their office is. The little pinpoint in the middle is where my senator, where his office is, right in the center, pretty good spot for it. And so we can actually zoom in and out and see that. Now, if you wanted to take it a step further, and the directions I just gave, sorry, I kind of breezed through this. The directions are at the top of this. So either nysenate.gov or nyassembly.gov. You're going to go to your senator's page. So either click senators and committees or assembly members, and then click your member. And if you're not sure of your member, you can also look them up on both of these sites. And then click for Senate, it's Our District, and for Assembly, it's Maps and Offices to find these maps. But there's a little sneaky shortcut for the Senate. So the Senate also has the full map. If you go to nysenate.gov/districts, you can see the full map. And again, it's on a Google map. So you can zoom in and out. You can see the district next door. And when you're on this one, if you hover your cursor over any of these shapes, any of these districts, you can actually see whose district it is. So a little screen will pop up next to your cursor and it'll say Senate District 51, Senator Breslin, and you can click and go to the district. So it's very easy to navigate this. The Assembly, in true Assembly fashion, does not make it so easy. So the Assembly, you do have to go the other way, where if you go to the assembly members, the site, nyassembly.gov, click on your assembly member, click maps and offices on their page, you can see kind of right under the main bar is the maps and offices link. So it's pretty, at least easy to find that. And then again, you can zoom in and out and you can kind of see neighboring districts. So it's not too bad, but it's not as easy as the Senate one. Congress, same thing. If you go to your Congress members page, they have a district option and you can go ahead and again, zoom in and out of the district and you can actually see again on a Google map. I just love Google Maps. It just makes everything so easy. And then last option, which is everything in one place. The Board of Elections website has it all in one spot, elections.ny.gov/district-maps.map, singular, not plural, .html. And this one has all three map options. So this is the map, obviously, of Congress, or that's not obvious, it's a map is obvious, but this is the congressional lines. And if you look over here, kind of like to the left side, there's what looks like a little stack of paper. And if you click that, you can see, you can select other types of district lines. So you can do assembly or you could do Senate. And again, if you hover your cursor over these districts, you can see what the district number is and whose district it is. My complaint about this one, and the reason I saved it as the last option, is because the covering, the purple covering, I think the Senate is red and the Assembly is an orange covering. It's very hard to see through. So it's very hard to see the street names, the parks, the things like that through that like thick border almost. So I would say try this one. Maybe your computer has better like lighting than mine does, but I found this one a little troubling. So I like the other options a little bit better. So now we know where to find the maps. What are we looking for on these maps? So here are some of like the buzzwords of what you're looking for. Hooks and wiggles. Is there a district, or does your district hook a little into a district and then come right back out? Like they just have a little tiny piece? Is your neighborhood or your block cut in half? Or do you have an area where your neighborhood or block is cut in half? Is there a super skinny district, or does your district have like a little bridge where it's like a big plop here, a big plop here, and then a little skinny bridge connecting? Or is it an earmuff or a hat? If we look down on this map, Staten Island kind of has a little hat. It's kind of wearing a little hat. And where's your neighborhood within the district? Again, thinking about, am I all the way on the border of the district? Should I be in the district next door? Because I basically am in the district next door. And again, think about earlier when I was mentioning kind of ways that this can impact you. Where's your representative's office? Is their office all the way on the other side of town? Or are you upstate and their office is in like 2 or 3 counties away from you? So think about things like that. It's kind of very general. Like even looking at this, I feel like you can kind of think through what are some of the problems that you might mention in your testimony about your district and how it's cut up. Now, if we want to take it a step further, we can also map our districts. We can map our communities. And here are some of the different free mapping software options that are out there. Representable, Dave's Redistricting, District Builder, and District R. And these are all free. They're all, I won't say they're all easy to use, because even I don't think they're all easy to use, but our favorite, the one that I do truly think is easy to use, is the first one, which is Representable, representable.org. This is a program out of Princeton. It's also super cool. It's made by students. Like, that's amazing. And I'm not going to do a full demo, but you can go to their website. They have excellent YouTube videos of how to use it. But I am going to just quickly give you a little snapshot of how it works. So you basically go onto the site, representable.org. You create an account. Don't worry, they will not spam you. I've had an account with them since like January. They've never sent me an email unless I like emailed them first or did something first. And then you can go ahead and map your community, and they prompt you with questions about your community of interest before you get started. So you can really think about how you might draw your own community of interest. So as you can see, these are some of the question prompts. And if you hit the caret key next to each of them, they also give you a little bit of background. So if you're kind of stumped and you can't really think, they'll give you a little bit of prompting of what you might be wanting to say and to put into this. So here's what it looks like after I've given them my info and filled in about my community of interest. This is a map of my neighborhood. Like literally, this is my neighborhood. And look, I can see everything. I can see my block. I can see the park I like to go to. I can see the university I went to. I can't see where I work from here, but I can see the hospital. I can see it all. And what these lines are census blocks. So we're not looking at legislative districts here. We're looking at the census block data. And this program actually allows you to select census blocks to create your community of interest. So again, I'm trying to do like the quick version of this. I clicked all the census blocks. I clicked where my favorite restaurant is. I clicked my school. I clicked my favorite park. I clicked where my house is. And then I can take this and I can convert it into a PDF, a GeoJSON file, or a CSV. So GeoJSON would allow you to basically take this map and put it into another software to add like legislative districts and all kinds of info in there, population data, all that kind of stuff you could do with another program. Or if you wanted to submit this map to the commission, you could just download it as a PDF. And you could go ahead and take all the info you put in about your community of interest and the map, smack them together, and you could submit that to the commission and you'd be all good to go. So this is just an option. Like I said, I think representable is definitely the easiest of them. But if you're a tech wizard, if you're someone who's really good at that stuff, definitely check out the other options. Dave's Redistricting is probably the most intensive one, and it's great, but I can't, it's too much for me. I can't do that one. So let's forge ahead. Okay, so we went over our community of interest. We learned where we can find our maps. We learned what are some of the problems we might want to be pointing out with maps. Now let's talk about what makes our testimony, how we're going to do that, and what's going to make it effective. So effective testimony kind of does 5 key things. It establishes credentials. It establishes a critical point. It tells a story. It provides evidence and lists consequences. And then we have our specific ask. So this is the only slide I took from Washington, actually. And as you can see, I messed it up because I forgot that it had a animation on it. But this is their handy guide for telling your testimony story. So credentials, critical point, personal impact, evidence, and the ask. And at the center of everything is our story, which is part of personal impact. So I'm going to go through each of these now. So credentials, very basic, your name, where do you live, your personal background, your contact information, and your affiliation. Now, these are rules apply to both the verbal and the written, but it's kind of more geared at the written here. So what I'll say for credentials is keep this really brief. Do this as quick as you can. And if you can cut anything out, cut it out. So your name, where do you live? You don't need to tell me your contact. If you want to say your affiliation because you're working with a group, then definitely do that. But as far as your personal background, keep it quick. That should be almost part of your quote unquote story. We don't need it here. So then your critical point. Why are you here? What's your purpose? What's your issue or concern? And what's one thing you want them to remember from your testimony? So I did a quick example of this. I live in District 1, going back to my school story earlier. I live in District 1. My children's school is split between 4 assembly districts, Assembly District 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm here because I want to ensure my community school district is not split. So quick, so easy, we did it. So then we want to tell our story. So we made our critical point. Now we want to tell the story. And this is where I would give that story I gave earlier, where I was talking about how the school is split. It doesn't have any money. We have really low graduation rates. We have really low test scores. We have really bad outcomes for students. This is where I would tell the story. And your story might be totally different than this. It might be that something as simple as, our garbage route is really weird because of the way our district is split, or even something like I said earlier about in Queens, where they had the story of they had a fire and the assembly member never even came to see what was happening and to help. So it could be something like that. I can't tell your story for you. You have to tell your own story, but hopefully the prompts will help you with that. So now the evidence. Now this is more for written testimony for sure. This is, you don't need to get super into the weeds with the oral testimony. You maybe want to mention like a high level statistic or something, but you definitely don't need to belabor this in your oral. But here are some examples of ways you can provide evidence. You can look at prior census data. You can look at demographic data. You can look at data from the source. So for my school example, I might look at my school's budget and all of the neighboring schools' budgets. I might look at the city budget. I might look at voter turnout data or data from other organizations. So the example earlier of the Hoosick Falls water crisis, I might look at Environmental New York's website. They have tons of stuff on Hoosick Falls, so does Sniperg, and kind of pull from there. I might look at maps. We went through mapping. In fact, this is probably one of the most impactful things you can do is include a map. You definitely, at the very least, want to include your specific district numbers. You want to make that known what districts you're talking about. And if you can, include a map of the district. It's just helpful to have it handy for the commissioners and their staff when they're looking at this. Or if you want to include a new map, you want to make a community map, whether you use representable or districting, and include that too. Also, anecdotal evidence, actually really powerful. I've noticed that the oral testimonies that I've heard so far, the ones that really make me go like, oh my God, are the ones where it's anecdotal evidence, where it's people talking about themselves and their neighbors. So stories from your friends and neighbors, news articles, or comparisons with other legislative districts all work really well. Okay, so just give me 1 second. I have a couple people in the waiting room. I'm just gonna let it. Okay. So here's some evidence of the examples. So my community split. I looked at the legislative district map. I showed the map to the commission. My school has less funding. I looked at the school budgets. I showed that the school compared to another school has way less money. There's bad outcomes. I looked at graduation rates in my school. I looked at graduation rates for another school, and it's very obvious that we have much worse outcomes. That's my evidence. So we also want to provide consequences for inaction. So for your written testimony, think about what's going to happen if nothing changes, and how can the community benefit if we do have these changes. So for the school example, again, if nothing changes, people might move out of this area and move somewhere else. And then the school will have even less funding because there's less of a tax base to even draw money from. And then the people who can't afford to move are going to be stuck there, and they're going to have an even worse school than they have to begin with. Whereas if it changes, we're going to have a good school. The kids are going to graduate at much higher rates. They're going to have much higher test scores. And overall, the community is going to do better because the kids of the people living there are going to be better off and have more money and be able to afford nicer houses. And just overall, it's just a nicer outcome. So then finally, the ask. And again, this should be super short to the point. And I think for the most part, people's asks are going to be pretty much the same, which is keep my community intact, or move my community to another district, or some other combination of, do my district lines differently. Basically, your map, if you do submit your own map, can really help with the ask because you'll have your recommended community right there. So that's a great way to do an ask, but it is really important with testimony to always end with some sort of ask or takeaway. So here's the hand again, and the animations I forgot to delete again. Oops. So the 5, again, your credentials, critical point, personal impact, evidence, ask, and at the center of it all is our story. Okay, so we're ready to put it on paper. We've got all of our ideas. We're ready to put it on paper. So use clear and simple language. We're not trying to write a whole dissertation for graduate school. Just use clear, simple language. And if you need to arrange the order of the 5 essentials, if you feel like you got it, you feel like you can figure it out at this point, then you don't have to do that. And if you really feel like I'm still struggling, you can use our templates to guide your writing. So we have 2 templates. We have the quick and easy testimony fill-in. So it's very, very basic here. My name is this, I vote in this district. Make it clear whether you're talking assembly, Senate, or Senate as well. So you want to make your district number clear, and you want to make what legislative office you're talking about clear as well. Talk about your neighborhood, what it means. Here are the facts. Here are the consequences. Here's my ask, and here is my info. And as you can see, the Washington state is still down there next to SIP, but don't worry, the one that's on the website does say New York. Washington created this one as well. Thank you, League of Washington. And then if you still feel like you need a little bit more, you want to add a little bit more meat to it, we have our storytelling guide, again, adapted from Washington. So your basics, why are you here? What's the most important thing? What evidence do you have to illustrate your point? Do you have a story? Why does this matter? And what do you want the commission to consider or change? And then I also added to our website our community of interest handout adapted from our National League of Women Voters. It's not just this one page, it's multi-pages, it's a PDF, just because I think communities of interest, this idea of communities of interest has been thrown around so much. And so if you're kind of like, I need more, I'm still not getting it, this handout is really great. And it just talks about what is a community of interest and basically what it's not as well. So let's prepare to testify. Here are some things to remember, some things that you can add in your testimony, some key ideas that you might want to mention. Keep the community together, eliminate the weird stuff we talked about earlier, the hats and the earmuffs and the hooks and the wiggles. Maybe we want to balance low and high income areas, maybe we want to separate. I can't answer that for you. That's about your own district. Not splitting defined groups, making my district easier to travel, and making my district more competitive, which if you have a district where maybe your district is primarily Asian Americans and you only ever have a white person representing you, that's probably something you can mention in your, or not probably, that is something you can mention in your testimony too. So making sure that we aren't districted in a way where the same person is winning over and over and over again with no competition. So best practices. Again, showing your specific map. You also can screen share with these hearings. So it's super helpful if you can literally show your map while you're talking, just have it queued up to go. So that way, when they call on you to testify, you can immediately share that map on the screen. It's super helpful for the commissioners to be able, and the staff to be able to see what you're talking about and have it right in front of their faces. And also, honestly, it kind of takes the pressure off a little bit when you have a screen share and it's not just your face right on the screen. I'm speaking from personal experience right now. I always feel so much more comfortable when I have a slide deck as opposed to like looking at everyone's face on the computer. So it might make you feel a little bit more at ease when you share your screen and you share the map, to not just be feeling like a little vulnerable when you're doing your testimony. Also, again, be specific about your legislative district numbers and what the legislative district is. So is it your assembly? Is it your Senate? Is your congressional? Or in some cases, especially in New York City, you might be mentioning a council district for reference, like, oh, this assembly district splits this council district. Make that clear. Just be super, super clear with that. But as I contradict myself, keep it brief and to the point, especially on your bio and background. Get right into it. Say who you are and just get right into it. You know, say your name, say where you live, say the districts that you are represented by, and then get right into it because you only have 3 minutes. And going along with that, practice ahead of time, time yourself, do it ahead of time. I do this when I testify. I always read my testimony and make sure that I have enough time. And if you feel like you need to cut it to, you know, give yourself extra time with the 3 minutes, do that, because it's better to know that you have the extra time and you can always add comments on at the end when you see, oh, I've got 30 more seconds versus I'm rushing to get through the last part of my statements. And again, close with a specific ask and be, again, super specific. So I'm in Assembly District 2, and I don't think that this district is districted properly, and I think that it needs, okay, that wasn't specific at all. Yeah, I'm coming up with this on the spot, guys. I think you get what I mean. I've said this a bunch of times. And then finally, providing a written copy to the commission. They're going to ask for this. So just have it ready to go. And that's where you can really elaborate on things and get kind of more into the weeds on things and be like how I'm being right now and saying things that I probably shouldn't be saying because we're wasting time. Let's move on. Finally, do's and don'ts. Visuals, appeal bullets are better than paragraphs. Using keywords, knowing your facts, always say thank you. Saying thank you, so nice. Don't be accusatory, don't be partisan, don't go over your time limit, right? Like I said, you only get 3 minutes, so make it count. And kind of with the visual appeal to the map, showing the map, it's gonna make you feel more comfortable, and it's super helpful for the commission to see the map in front of their faces when you're talking about it. Some resources, again, like I said, I will drop these in the chat as well, but I'll leave this up for 1 second because I know some people like to screenshot. I know some people like to take photos with their phone. They think that's easier. So just for 1 second, leaving that up. And then what now? here is the one I showed you earlier, the slide from earlier with some extra stuff on here. So the website again, nyirc.org. Click on meetings, click on submit testimony, or sign up to attend, whichever you want to do. If you're going to submit or you're going to sign up. Create an account. Don't worry, it's really easy. They're not going to spam you. And you have to register no later than 2 p.m. the day prior to the community hearing. You will get an email from the commission later, probably most likely, because you're probably going to do it early because I know you're all super good. Don't be surprised if you don't receive that email right away. Sometimes they will not let you know until the day before. That's the way that government seems to work. I know I always find out if I'm going to testify at a hearing literally the day before. Just be ready, because you probably will get the call and you probably will be invited to testify. And if you don't receive it the day prior, definitely like that morning, send an email and be like, hey, I didn't get an invite. Am I on the list? And then a PS for you all. If you can't make these dates on the screen right here, or if you go on the website and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in Western New York, I cannot make that date. There will be a catch-all hearing announced soon that will take place the end of August. So if you missed Long Island or you missed Queens, or you just know you can't make the other dates, it may be happening later. I have also heard that the commission is getting lots of interest now, which is awesome. So they may wind up moving the time scheduled for the hearing earlier if they get a ton of people. They had over 100 today for Queens, which is so amazing. But if they get a ton of people for a given hearing, they may move the time up from 2 to an earlier time in the day, so that way everyone can participate and be heard. So again, I'm going to leave this up for a second and we're going to move on. nyirc.org. Again, it's the acronym of New York Independent Redistricting Commission. So that's what it stands for. Okay. And my final thoughts. So I'm going to wrap almost in 1 second. So my final thought, please share this training. Please share it, please share it, please share it. Please invite me to come and present to, if you're here on behalf of a group, please invite me to come present it. I promise it'll be better than this one because this is only the first one. So invite me to come present it, or present it yourself. I'm going to give you these slides. I want you to have these slides. I want you to take these slides. You can amend them. You can change them. You can put your logo on it. You can do whatever you want with the slides. I want you to use it. Help us get the word out, help us share the recording of this, help us share these materials, share the hearing dates, talk to one person in your neighborhood about this, and just help us get the word out. And then finally, I am going to share all the links and the slides, the documents, all of the things I'm going to put in the chat. And I see there's a lot of stuff going on in the chat, so I will look through that and we can respond to questions too. Here's my email. I'm going to put that in the chat too. But with that, I'm gonna take it off. And Laura, if you've been looking at the chat, would you sort of like read off maybe that one of the first questions while I just pull this and stick it all in the chat?
Sure. Well, actually, Sarah Wilkins had her hand up for a while, so let's see what Sarah. It didn't come from the chat, so let's see what Sarah.
It was a mistake. It was a mistake.
Oh, that's all right. No problem. Okay, so most of them are just saying what a great job you did, Jennifer. And they're glad that you're going to be sharing all of this information. Lorette just says, if we have questions about our presentation to the commission, can somebody from the league help them? And I will answer. Just for those of you who don't know me, I'm Laura Ladd-Bierman. I work for the State League as well. And Jennifer and I are happy to help anyone. So our emails are really easy. It's just our first name at lwvny.org. We can put that in the chat too. And, you know, we can, you know, give you some help or advice if you want.
Oh, I have something that, this is so funny. That I just got in the chat. I had said nyirc.org and it is in fact gov. I had org on the brain from our own website, so I'm putting it in the chat again to everyone, but it's .gov, so I apologize about that.
There's a question, Jen, about the New York Census and links about the census. Now, we don't have, I mean, you have the you have some of the block information that you use to create your maps, but the census information is not going to be available till August, correct? Maybe you can say a little more on that.
Sure. Yeah. So August, it's either 15 or 16. It's the middle of August. And yes, so the websites, the different mapping softwares have told us that once that data is public, they can pretty much immediately update their sites to reflect the new census population counts. So if you are planning on being kind of a little bit more specific with your testimony where you want to really play by the rules, because I didn't say this in the initial part where I kind of talked about the background, but yes, every single district is supposed to be about the same size and population, and there's a specific number that every single district for Senate, Assembly, and Congress, obviously those numbers are different for the 3 levels, are supposed to be around. So there will be an option to really, like I said, like play by the rules and do a full map of the entire state and play by those rules and have your districts be about the same size. But at this point, you really don't super need the census data because we're not looking at the map that the commission will ultimately be putting forward. As they've said, this is more of a listening session. So this is kind of like filling in the gaps that the census isn't going to give. Like the census isn't going to tell the commission that your legislator's office is all the way on the other side of town or 3 counties from you if you try to drive to it, it'd take you 3 hours to get to. The census isn't going to tell them that. That's kind of what they want to hear. Or I know I keep saying the story, it just stuck with me so much, but the fact that there was the fire in the district and the assembly member never showed up, the census isn't going to tell them that. That's really what they're kind of looking for here.
Margaret has a question, Jennifer. I don't quite understand it though. Can a local league testify and also as a constituent of a particular Senate, Assembly, congressional, county, or municipality? So I guess is she asking if she can do 2 testimonies? Margaret, I don't know if you want to chime in here.
Yeah, so and Nassau County League Nassau ILO has testified at the Long Island one, did an excellent job and really did exactly what we're kind of talking about here, where they were super specific about the districts, the number and which one it was, that it was Assembly or Senate. And they were super specific about the problem of the area that was being split. The only thing that maybe would have even further driven the point home would have been to have the map sort of on the screen, which is not a ding on them. Like I said, it was a fabulous testimony, but it was a very short time to turn this around. So, but yeah, so the local league can testify as long as, so this is speaking to league folks and not people on here not from the league, but if you are a local league or if you're just a member and you wanted to testify, definitely talk to your league president. We also have redistricting delegates for all of the local leagues that can help you with this too. And yes, local leagues definitely sign up to testify, definitely testify on behalf of your local league. Or if you're just like a regular person and you just want to testify, you're a member, but you want to testify like as me, as Jennifer Wilson, then you can do that too. Or not as me, but like as you.
I think Margaret's asking, could she testify twice? Once in testimony representing the league and then once representing herself. Would that be permitted, or is that probably she should just do one of those in written testimony?
Yeah, probably, because I don't think you can't do two.
Okay. So you could do one in writing and submit that, and then the other one you could present and submit as well. So, yep. Oh, and Nassau, it says, included the maps in their written submission. So that's great. Good job,
Yes.
Karen.
Karen did an excellent job. Cool.
Okay.
Any other, I'm feeling bad because I feel like there was more up in the chat that I missed.
No, I think you covered most of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Laurette?
Hi, excuse me. I ran for state assembly for the 105th in 2018 and 2020. It's a gerrymandered Republican district. Would it help me? First of all, I'll testify as a voter, not as a candidate. Number one, I think. But would it help if I put the numbers for each this town, how they're heavily Democrat, and they took Beacon, which is in the middle of Fishkill, took it out and gave it to the 104th because Beacon is heavy Democrat. It would help me to do that, to show how the numbers are. That is definitely gerrymandered Republican.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I didn't mention this either. All the things I didn't mention are coming up, but we also should remember that districts cannot be drawn by party alone. So party cannot be the only reason a district's drawn a given way. So I think if you had other things supporting that too, like if you said, oh, not just that, but also it splits a low income area, or it like groups in this other group that doesn't belong with us, that would definitely help too. But I really think that as long as you're giving maps, I think it's going to be, and being specific, it's going to be helpful.
Well, they even cut the town of Wappingers in half.
Yeah, so that
That's-
especially, so we talked about how we don't want to split towns and we don't want to split counties whenever possible. So that is like super, super good evidence. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Andrew?
Yeah.
I have a question about like past patterns of districts, like for example, in the congressional districts, there was in the previous decades, for the past 2 decades before the teens, this Ithaca and was connected to a district that went all the way down to Sullivan County. That was one congressional district known by the nickname the Crunchy or the Granola District, because it was sort of from Woodstock to Ithaca. Then there was another district on the southern tier, but there was a historical break between those two. One, they had very different identities. Can you make a case like that? I mean, in other words, these are old historic identities and affinities. One is in the southern tier, one is in, I'm not going to call it the Granola District, but it has a very different kind of alternative identity. One has 3 universities in it, 3 major universities. So, they seem to be different. They were always historically different. So I wonder if you can make that kind of historical pattern.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, that would be great. And I know that in Western New York, the Buffalo League keeps telling me about the earmuff district, which is, I guess, one of those little terms came from, where it kind of like linked the city of Buffalo and linked the city of Rochester, and then had this like little piece in between. So yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, and definitely just as long as you're being specific about the district numbers and everything, I think that's great.
Okay. Thank you.
Jen, somebody is asking, Mary Ellen is asking about a district that goes from Orange County all the way up to Herkimer and all. So she's just wondering suggestions. I assume what you would tell her is more about communities of interest, and that's where she needs to try and focus. But do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's so funny because you guys are going to give all the examples of things that are your testimonies, but yeah, you're right on. I mean, you're talking about one of the terms we talked about, the skinny districts, the weirdly skinny districts that just like stretch out for no reason. And that can kind of be your starting point. And then, again, kind of think through like, what does splitting my county do for my community as a whole? And then also think about maybe through representable, how would I redistrict this if I was in charge? What would I do? So I would say maybe start with just looking at the current maps, going on the links we shared earlier, the Assembly and Senate ones, and then also the election one, the main one, and just sort of look at the maps around it and kind of like think through like, how would I do it differently?
Other questions? I don't see any more in the chat right now, Jen. Yeah, and Laura Quigg has noted that you can see the hearings that have already been held are on the NYIRC YouTube channel. So if you'd like to see what other people have said, you can go and watch the testimonies that have been given this week.
Yes, and I'm gonna put the link in one more time. I cannot believe I did that. Classic example of you look at something too long and it just kind of gets blurry, but it's nyirc.gov. They also have a Facebook and a Twitter, and they live stream on Facebook as well, and they archive on Facebook too. So if you don't like YouTube, you can do Facebook. That's what I've been watching them on, and it's great. I mean, they've gone really excellently so far, the 2 of them that they've had.
All right, well, I don't see any other questions.
I'm shocked we did this in an hour. Wow.
No, went great. Yeah. Will this recording be sent to participants? No, we will not be sending it, I assume, to participants, but it is posted on our website that I'll put in the chat again. The recording as well as the slides, and there's a wealth of other information there too. So you might want to check out that website for a lot of information on redistricting. Okay, any last questions?
Oh, I think Andrew has another question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry to be hogging the questions, but let me just ask another quick one. And this is more about the state assembly and the state senate. In terms of competitiveness, can you make that, is that a case you can make also? In other words, if you live in a state assembly district that is really drawn so that it favors the incumbent, can you talk about how it would be better, that it's important to have party competition between the two?
Yeah, and actually, oh, sorry, go ahead, Andrew. I didn't
Go
mean to
ahead. No,
interrupt you.
that's all I was going to say.
Yeah, and you maybe got on a little late, because in the beginning we talked about like the rules, and that's one of the rules is having to be competitive. So yeah, definitely you can talk about that. I feel like you
Okay.
it's already written, Andrew. Like you already wrote it.
Yeah, the one thing, and Jen, maybe you want to mention that again, when you were responding to Lorette too, that you can't just say you want the lines changed because of a party. There has to be some other evidence. They're not just drawn to benefit or disadvantage a specific party, or they're not supposed to be. So I don't know, Jen, if you want to mention that again.
I think you just did.
Lorette, go ahead.
But all right, again, back to my district, 105th, it is definitely drawn for the Republicans to win, and it's been like that for 20 years. And so that is my main argument with them, that there's no competition for the assembly seat. A Republican wins no matter who runs.
Well, Lorette, one thing you have to remember, and Jen did mention this very quickly, she talks very fast, but at the beginning is that the legislature used to draw all the lines. And then in 2014, the league supported a constitutional amendment that created this independent redistricting commission that was passed in 2014. This is the first time it's being implemented. And so this new independent redistricting commission holding these hearings, asking for input, all of that, this is all new. So yes, this is why we pushed in 2014 for the change, because we didn't want all the legislators just drawing their lines so that they could get reelected and reelected and reelected. So the past has been, we believe, was more that way. And we're hoping with this new process now that it will be more transparent, more open, and even in that 2014 amendment, Jen went over some of the rules of what how the districts have to be drawn. And that was written into the Constitution with that amendment in 2014. So we're trying to stay optimistic.
So by showing how this district is so heavy, so my question is, we're showing that this district is so heavy Republican that
you can't just do it on partisan lines. You got to do it by communities of interest.
that's what I'm saying. So by showing that it's partisan, that it's what helped make my point.
Yep.
Okay.
So, and we're optimistic that this process will be not quite as partisan now. And
I hope.
Oh, there's another question in the chat, Jen.
Oh, there is? Oh.
Would this approach work for a town moving from an at-large to ward system where town doesn't have districts drawn?
So like I said at the beginning, I'm mainly talking about Senate, Assembly, and Congressional, but yeah, so and I know that there's a couple towns in New York State that are all at large, like there is no district. So
Right.
No, it probably won't, because there probably won't be hearings. There probably won't be any like questions because there won't be any redistricting. So it'll just be, at least if I'm understanding your question correctly.
Each county in the past few years, or many counties, I should say, I don't know of all, have been considering redistricting reforms in anticipation of this new census. So a lot of counties, and each county determines how the redistricting is done in that county. So it can be very different in one county than in another county. And I always forget if it's Ulster or Dutchess. I'm sure somebody on here can tell me. Has did a great, and they have a great model of a new redistricting commission and independent plan for redistricting in the county. And others are working on it as well, but each county is very different. So we can't really tell you exactly how redistricting occurs in your own area.
Okay, yeah, Tony Taylor here. I'm the one who asked the question.
Okay.
I posted the question, and the town in question is East Fishkill, if anybody's asking. That's one of the towns in New York City, New York State, that is still at large. So we've been trying to do it for a few years, and for a host of reasons, and now we're going to keep working on it in a bipartisan way for the town. So that's why I asked. Thank you.
What county are you in, Tony?
Dutchess.
Dutchess. Okay, so it's Ulster, right next door. So you should, look at what Ulster County did and see if you can, get copies and start working on a redistricting process for Dutchess. If we think that Ulster did a good job of what they created. So.
Oh, okay, yeah, there are plenty of folks in East Fishkill and Dutchess on this call right now, so I'm sure we'll be chatting about this afterwards.
Good, great.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Great. Well, I have one final thing to say to you all, which is to drive home the point, because I see a lot of unfamiliar names on this, and I'm so thrilled. This isn't league property. Take these slides, download them to your computer, do whatever you want with them, share them, get this out there. I don't care if you take our logo off. I don't care what you do with it, or invite me. I'll come virtually. But please just share all of this information, because really the most important thing is like getting this out there and letting people know that they can participate and that they'll have a second shot to participate after the commission releases their draft maps in September. So this is the first shot. We'll have a second shot. And I hope that you'll consider working with us. And like I said, invite me, email me, let me know if you want to hang out virtually. So thanks everybody for joining us today.
Have a good night. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thanks, guys.